Howdy. Welcome back. As you can see, I'm no longer in Belize. It's 27 degrees below zero in good old North Dakota. I'm glad you're here with us, and I'm excited about what we're going to study in another episode of Crack Open the Book, but it's a little chillier up here in the north. So I hope you're warm and cozy as we prepare to finish out the story of Noah. So let's pick it up. Noah was given some instructions about the construction of this grand ark because man's intent was on evil all the time. And God, for 120 years, was able to give Noah the opportunity to preach and to build until such time as he finally decided that man had been disobedient long enough. So he gathered the animals, and Noah got them in the appropriate numbers. And then Noah, at the course of the water as it finished its 150 days, was told to prepare to disembark. And certainly he did so, and great rejoicing was on that boat. I'm sure that was one of the happiest days in mankind's existence. And of course, as the text reveals, by faith Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved he was with godly fear. He prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. And we spend a great deal of time defining faith so that when you see that word in the text, you understand clearly that faith is what a person believes to be true. And biblically, you need to believe two things. One, that God is, and that he is a rewarder of those who believe in him. And Noah was that kind of guy. He believed it, and he built that boat, and he certainly labored for all those years, knowing that God would provide him a reward, and certainly the reward was the saving of his family and all of the animals, and there was, as we said, great rejoicing in that. And Noah did that by faith. He acted on what he believed to be true. So, at the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window, and you see there that through the process of sending out a couple of birds, first a raven and then a dove, Noah was able to determine if the land was dry. You know, Noah still has to live his life. God didn't just say, okay, come on, get out. Noah had to use his brain a little bit. And that's the way it works with God. God does some things for us, but we are responsible to figure a few things out. And he sent the dove out in the appropriate order, as we see there in verse 12. Then he waited yet another 7 days and sent out the dove, but she did not return to him again. So that's kind of a big tip-off, okay? The water's down low enough to where the bird evidently is able to find a place to perch. So it came about in the 601st year of the first month, on the first of the month, that the water was dried up from the earth. And then Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the surface of the ground was dried up. So on the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dry. And of course, then God spoke to Noah, hey, go out of the ark, you and your wife, and your sons wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing of all the flesh that is with you, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they might breed abundantly on the earth and be fruitful and multiply. God's still working his plan. Remember that. In the background, he's still working his plan. And what's his plan? For man to live with him. He loves man. He just doesn't love man when he sins in such a horrendous way that he can ignore it. Justice has to be a part of who God is. And so God has just executed his justice, but he is releasing Noah to begin again, as he told Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. Now Noah's going to give it another go for the human family, and going to try to see if we can't get this ship righted. So when Noah got out of the boat, it says he built an altar to the Lord. Why is that? Because that's what you do. You pay tribute to God. And in this period of time where there are no books and laws and temples and priests, the understanding had been passed down from Adam, as we saw with the skins first given to Adam by God, and then the sacrifices with Cain and Abel. And so that continues on as a practice for these now 1,600 years. Yes, the world's been going on for 1,600 years. And Noah built that altar, and what did he do? He took one of those clean animals that he had provided, and the bird, and he offered it to God. And it says, the Lord smelled the soothing aroma. And Jehovah said to himself, I will never again curse the ground on account of man. For the intent of man's heart is evil from its youth. He knew that if he knew he would have to be back to this spot again. Man's going to do it again. Man is going to dwell on evil, he's going to do evil, and he's going to be evil. And God knows it, but not everybody. Not everybody. The ones that want to follow God, they're not going to do this stuff. And so he doesn't want to go, he doesn't want to keep wiping out the world and starting over every time. He's going to let it run its course. And he pledges that I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done, meaning with water. He gives some instructions now to Noah, because God's not going to keep wiping out the earth. He's going to put some responsibility on man to kind of police up his own world. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Surely I will require your lifeblood. From every beast I will require it, and from every man. From every man's brother I will require the life of man. Why and when? Well, whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. God's not going to step in anymore and wipe out the human race because of murderers and rapists and all that kind of stuff. Man is going to police himself, and that'll hopefully help in the accountability category. But why is it done that way? For in the image of God he made man. You are killing a creature of God. And that is not to be taken lightly. So he says, this is the beginning of capital punishment. As for you, be fruitful and multiply. Populate the earth abundantly and multiply in it. Now here are two texts to confirm the idea of capital punishment. Sometimes this subject is a little controversial, but there's no controversy in the Bible when it comes to this. Later on in the historical record, Moses is told to record in the law of the nation of Israel the very same thing that he told Noah. He said, if a man takes the life of any human being, he shall surely be put to death. The one who takes the life of an animal shall make it good, life for life. That means if you kill an ox or a chicken or something like that and it don't belong to you, then you have to pay back an ox or chicken or whatever it may. But if a man injures his neighbor just as he has done, so it shall be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Just as he inquired a man, so it shall be afflicted upon him. Thus the one who kills an animal shall make it good, but the one who kills a man shall be put to death. Here we find the principle of punishment fitting the crime. This is an important concept in the jurisprudence system. So if you need to find something equal, tooth for tooth, so forth. Something as valuable as a tooth, or some kind of it doesn't have to be your tooth. It can be some other punishment that's equal value to what you have lost. And that we see played out in details in the rest of the scriptures. But all the way up to the fast forwarding into the New Testament, look what the Apostle Paul says as he's on trial. He says, if then I am a wrongdoer and I have committed anything worthy of death, I do not refuse to die. What's he saying there? If I've done something that's worthy of death, then I need to be killed. That's the way it's always been. But if none of those things is true of which these men accuse me, no one can hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar. So Paul is standing trial for a crime that the Pharisees and the Sadducees are accusing him of, blasphemy and so forth, that they believe is worthy of death. And in some regards in the Old Testament, you might be able to make that case. But Paul's saying, first of all, I'm not guilty of that. But secondly, if I have done something worthy of death, I'm not going to stand in the way of it, because that is the way it's supposed to be done. So capital punishment is as old as man. God executed mankind because of the evil that he was engaged in. And then after the flood, God put that responsibility on men. And the existence of government and so forth will begin to develop as a result of that. So, God spoke to Noah and his sons, saying, Now behold, I myself do establish my covenant with you, and with your descendants after you. This is the sign of the covenant which I am making between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for all successive generations. This term covenant, as it appears here and actually a little bit earlier in the story, becomes a significant word in both the Old and New Testament. He says, I'm going to establish my covenant. And there's going to be a sign of the covenant, some symbol, indication, something. So in verse 13, he says, I set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be for a sign of a covenant between me and the earth. It shall come about when I bring the cloud over the earth, that the bow will be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And never again shall the waters become a flood to destroy all flesh. Man is going to continue to do evil things, and God will get angry. It's just going to happen over and over. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And so God has put a mechanism in there to remind both those that are trying to do good and himself, although he doesn't need to be reminded of anything, but he's doing it. He's saying these things for our benefit. He says he'll see that bow in the cloud, that rainbow, and not destroy the world with water. Now, the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. So they're out of the boat. They're getting in the business of repopulating the earth. They've got some additional instructions and a promise. Their instructions is that now they are going to have to formulate a police department and kind of police things, okay? And murder is punishable by death. And other crimes need to be punishable in kind. Some appropriate punishment that's of equal value. And now they start to populate, and they have the promise that God's not going to destroy the world. Why would we want to repopulate the world if he's just going to turn around and wax us all again? God puts the rainbow to give Noah's family and his descendants an assurance that God won't do that again. So the good guys are going to get to survive. Now Noah began farming, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk, and uncovered himself inside his tent. Now, I want to say one thing about that. Man, Noah has been through the ringer. I'm not saying that getting drunk is a good idea. I'm not saying it's an idea anytime. But the Bible is not commenting on Noah's drunkenness. Noah was in his tent. He'd been through a tough one. He finally, got some grapes on the vine. He made himself some wine, and all by himself, he drank a little too much of it. And he didn't have no clothes on inside his tent. He was just naked inside his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, which was the son of Noah, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Now, the context would suggest that he told them in some sort of a derogatory manner, make fun of their father. Nakedness in and of itself is never to be made fun of. And nakedness is restricted to the individuals in a marital relationship. And the evidence of that is borne out even in the garden. Remember, Adam and Eve were naked, and they did what? They hid themselves from God. They just immediately, that's not acceptable. That's a bad deal. And so he goes out and he tells his two brothers what's going on here and makes fun of him. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and they laid it upon. Now, why would they know to do this? Why would they? Because they already know. 1,600 years of history. There are certain things that man knows. Don't need a law book. You don't need anything written down. They know that nakedness isn't right. So they put a coat on and they walk backwards. These guys have got they got class, man. They got integrity. Now, Ham, he don't. He wanted to make fun of their father. And so we need to remind ourselves, you don't mess around with nakedness. You just don't. We hardly even blush in our society anymore. We got television shows and everything, but nakedness all over. We don't even blush. These boys with integrity, they got a blanket and they walk backwards. They covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were turned away so that they did not see their father's nakedness. Got people running around in communes, taking off their clothes and thinking that's some kind of, living free. Well, let me tell you something. There's going to be trouble. There's trouble in that. And so we see this account of the distinction again. Already out of the boat. Ham, who built the boat, helped build the boat. He's already given in to temptation. When Noah awoke from his wine, he knew what his youngest son had done to him. The Bible doesn't tell us how he knew. And I'm not going to try to speculate. Here's what it says. He finally woke up, caught his senses, wandered around. I don't know. The other boys told him. He figured it out from the clues. I don't know. What I do know is that he knew. So he said, "Cursed be Canaan." Now, Canaan is Ham's son. Okay? So Noah gets up and he curses his grandson. Okay? His descendants. Because that's a big deal. That's hitting you where it hurts in the next descendants. He says, "A servant of servants he shall be to his brothers." This is Noah, the great patriarch, Grandpa Noah. He's laying it, buddy. You are not in the will, dude. Now, nakedness is serious. And more fathers need to stand up and make these cases. Just because a kid is your kid doesn't mean he deserves a blessing. And we see this, and we're going to see more of it like this too. "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants. He shall be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be Jehovah, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." Noah lived 350 years after the flood, so all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So he cursed his grandson. He blessed his other two boys and reminded them, now this is the blessing, this is like the will. He said the other two boys are going to be served by the descendants of their brother Ham. I don't think the grandson's very happy with his dad. Noah then would go on to live 950 years, and he died. And we spoke about this briefly in an earlier picture. Why did they live so long? Well, one thing's for sure. When you look on a chart, and we might pull one out next time, that the ages of people dropped drastically after the flood. And we alluded to the fact that one of the number one, if not the number one, aging ingredient is the sun's rays, ultraviolet rays. But they can be blocked by various things in the atmosphere, like big bands of water. And now that water is gone. And so we see the ages of people become less significantly. Here's 950 years, pretty close to one of the oldest guys, like Methuselah and Adam. But The show ends with Noah living on for a number of years after the flood, enjoying the good times of the repopulation. So the next part of the Genesis record lists all of the generations in detail. And you say, well, why do we have to read that stuff? Well, that tells you that God's keeping track. He knows the names of these people. He knows your name. He keeps track of the descendants before you and after you. Make no mistake about it. The generations of Shem, Ham, and Japheth are recorded in the books of heaven. And he puts these little pieces in here to let us know he's keeping track. Now, a particularly interesting descendant is the man by the name of Nimrod. Now, Cush became the father of Nimrod, and he became a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Jehovah. Of course, this is, hunting and farming is how you make your living during this period of time. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. This guy rose in prestige among his clan and community, and he was well known throughout the land. And he got to the point, as we see there in verse 10, the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. And look at all those lands that he had in the land of Shinar, probably cities that he controlled within that geographical feature. From that land he went forth into Assyria and built Nineveh. And these are also recognizable cities. So Nimrod, the descendants, as it was, of Noah and Noah's family, built these big cities. And he's the guy that we're going to check in with here in just a second, that's responsible for the building of a famous tower. So in verse 32, these are the families of the sons of Noah according to their genealogies by their nations. And out of these nations were separated on the earth after the flood. So we have the record of those, and they provide us with an accurate account of the repopulation of the earth by generations. And we can see them in the record in the New Testament. Shem is the line that's super important, and we're going to check on him from time to time. Notice that the last guy in this first segment of his genealogy is a man by the name of Abraham. Remember in Genesis 3:15, God predicted that there was going to be a smashing of a serpent's head. Someone was going to come. And we're exploring that, but that someone is Jesus. And the record of his lineage is recorded and preserved from Shem, all the way through Adam, and all the way through Abraham, and on into Jesus the Christ. So this genealogy becomes very important because it shows that God is in charge, because he predicts the lineage, and the lineage does indeed play out thousands of years. It's remarkable. So the sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, begin slowly to spread out across the planet. But the event that really triggers the spreading was an event that took place down in Babel. So we're going to check on that. This is known as the Fertile Crescent. And in this Fertile Crescent region, we find the beginnings of what we call in science the separation of the tectonic plates. After the flood, there seems to be a drastic shift in the plates, and the continents begin to drift, because at the original creation there was only one land mass. And that's why you only find koala bears in Australia and certain other kinds of animals in different parts of the world, because suddenly they got isolated and the climate changed, and we went from one universal climate to multiple climates, like we're here in good old North Dakota, where it's 27 degrees below zero or 27 degrees above down in Denver, and then down in Belize, it's a sunny 75. So that certainly would change the way that animals lived on the planet. So farming begins as a main staple throughout, as we said, the Fertile Crescent. And we call it that because it runs the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers all the way over to the Nile. That region, that's where you put your settlements, is where the water is. And so there again, the opportunity to develop. Now let's close out this first period. All right, man started over, the descendants have multiplied, a couple more 100 years have passed by, and a man by the name of Nimrod has arisen. And Nimrod is an effective leader, and he gathers everybody together. The whole earth used the same language and the same words. It came about that as they journeyed east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly." And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. I just mentioned, you see up there, a reference to Apologetics Press. Apologetics Press has some excellent articles on the development of language and how language spread and changed, as well as DNA of the various people groups, how they can be marked from this region of the world. We can agree that civilization started in this part of the world. And so I encourage you to go on to Apologetics Press and snoop around and type in the Tower of Babel. And there are some excellent articles there for you to read about how that came back. So the whole earth, everybody's talking the same language. They're going to build us a tower. What for? Well, the Bible says, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us make for ourselves a name." Well, what happened to God? "Otherwise we'll be scattered abroad over the face of the earth." We need to build this and make a name for ourselves. Isn't that just the human way? So a couple 100 years after the flood, and man still, they passed it down through the fathers, but somebody's been forgetting. No way. You need to honor God. Don't start building stuff to yourself. But that's what they did. So the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they began to do. And now nothing which they propose to do will be impossible for them on the earth." He knows where this is going. They're going to start thinking they can do everything and they don't need God, which is what happens as technological advancements take place. Just look around you. In the Western societies where technology has advanced, that's the lowest percentage of religious people in the world. They don't need God. So we find out that God's going to make a decision. "Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, so they will not understand one another's speech." So Jehovah scattered them abroad from over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore, its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. So this was a subtlety. Remember, God wasn't going to destroy the world with the flood anymore. But it looks like man's headed back in that direction. That is, that they're going to do stuff for their own benefit. They forgot God. So God this time confused the languages. And he did so to make sure that he got his message across. So next time, we're going to pursue how God deals with the next phase of his plan. Man is scattered over the earth. He has begun to discover some of his own abilities, but he's leaving God out. And so next time we're going to look at Abraham. We're going to start in that section and what God's going to do to get us back on the road again. But remember, just for your own remembrance, next time we're going to have a test. We're going to have a test over everything that we've covered so far, from Adam up to the building of the Tower of Babel. And so we want you to make sure you're prepared for that. So do some reading. There'll be an online test next time when we, crack open the book. So God bless you. And remember, always pass that blessing along.
This has been a Badger Godbolt production. For more information or to ask a question, please feel free to contact us at crack.open.the.book@gmail.com. You can also visit our YouTube channel, Crack Open the Book, at youtube.com. And don't forget to follow us so you never miss an opportunity to have a conversation about truth.